Welcome back, everybody, to These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For. We got Lorenzo Fawn sitting here with...
Kevin Horde. What's up, buddy?
Not much. We are recording a bonus episode. We will be discussing more theme park news that was released. A good day for it, too, because as of today, as we're recording this, it is actually Mickey Mouse's 90th birthday. And,
Happy birthday, Mickey Mouse.
90, man. And, I actually just spent most of my day at the Disneyland Resort, walked around, clocked in about 10.5 miles of walking today.
That is awesome.
Right.
Realizing that Mickey Mouse is 90 years old, I just realized also that my grandpa is older than Mickey Mouse.
Weird.
Yeah. It is weird.
Yeah. Because
for 95 next February. So
wow. Yeah, my grandfather on my mother's side was born in 1933, so he's a little younger. But what I remember is he was born the same year as the release of the original King Kong.
Oh, okay.
So, yep. A lot of old stuff happening back then. But so the theme parks were packed today for Mickey Mouse's birthday. There was some special stuff, but let's get into the news that was announced yesterday. Walt Disney Imagineering holds special events for fans, and if you're a member of the D23 fan club, you can buy tickets to certain events, special events that they'll hold. And what they had yesterday was an event called Destination D. It was held in Epcot in Florida. And they announced a lot of Star Wars Galaxy Edge related news. Nothing regarding opening dates beyond summer for Disneyland and fall for Walt Disney World. But we finally have names for the 2 rides that will be...
Well, that's the other way around, right? Disneyland is going to be in fall, and Disney World is going to be...
Disneyland opens first. California Disneyland opens their Galaxy's Edge first in summer.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought it was like... Yeah, I gotcha.
Yep.
I gotcha.
Yep.
I was thinking of it backwards. My apologies.
Yep, so West Coast gets sometime generic summer, so that could be anywhere from late June to late September. And then Walt Disney World is anywhere from late September to late December.
Right.
As of right now, so like before I announce what was announced, the current rumors for Disneyland's opening date is a lot of speculation, and there's a few pieces of evidence. I think I've discussed it a little bit here on this podcast, but just to reiterate, for the first time, so if you're unaware with the Disneyland Resort, there are 2 separate theme parks. There's Disneyland Park, the original Magic Kingdom. Then there's Disney's California Adventure. If you bought an annual pass, there are different levels, different tiers of annual passes that have different prices and different blackout dates and different discounts and other stuff, right? So the annual pass has always just been a full access. Whatever day you aren't blacked out, you have access to the entire resort. Does that make sense?
So you can park jump between
Disneyland and California Adventure. For the first time recently, they announced that for some of the lower tiered annual passes, they will have separate blackout dates depending on which park. So
so this is pretty good evidence that something is going on.
They're planning ahead, right? So I don't recall if it's there's like 4 tiers that are available to buy. There's like SoCal, then like a SoCal Plus or something like that, and Deluxe and Signature and a Signature Plus. I might be getting the names of the SoCal versions wrong, but there are two SoCal levels. I don't remember if it's the deluxe that gets messed up too, but for sure the two SoCals. Actually, no, it is the deluxe as well. I'm remembering; it's all coming back to me. There are blackout dates starting for just Disneyland Park, but not Disney California Adventure, at the end of June.
Okay, so which park is Galaxy's Edge going
Disneyland.
to reside?
It was going into Disneyland Park. So
Okay.
that is the original 1955 Disney park. It's the first Disney park ever made, right? California Adventure is
Cool.
the secondary park that opened in 2001. And there's been a lot of debate on whether or not Galaxy's Edge should have gone in Disneyland Park or California Adventure. And the reasoning being that because Disneyland is the original park that Walt Disney himself actually walked around, it's the only park that he was alive to open, right? He was long gone by the time
Really?
Walt Disney. Yeah, by the time the original Magic Kingdom in Florida opened, he passed away in '66, I want to say. And Walt Disney World opened in '71.
Okay.
So he had laid down the plans, but everything else afterwards, the finalization, his older brother Roy spearheaded a lot of what became the final version of Walt Disney World. And that is a big reason of why it's Disneyland, but the proper name for the Florida park resort is Walt Disney World. That's a Roy thing. He wanted to make sure that everybody remembered that it was one man behind all of this.
Walt.
It was Walt's vision. So that's why I'll try and be proper, so I'll try and say Walt Disney World instead of just Disney World, but yeah, it's fine. Whatever, right? So like, if you live in Southern California, there's a shorthand where you just say, "Oh, we're headed to Disney," So, and we all know that means Disneyland and not like Disney Studios, which is an hour north of here, right? So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, so that's kind of the debate behind whether or not it should have gone there. I think the only reason they put it in Disneyland is because it is the largest single land expansion for any Disney park. And they basically needed all the space they could get. And there's a lot more backstage area for Disneyland that they were able to clear out and move away. Whereas where California Adventure is situated, it's surrounded by like actual streets on the other, like it's up to the border of what Disney owns, right?
Right.
So there's not many other places to kind of stretch out there.
Now, is there any thoughts or rationale for why Disney didn't just expand and try to purchase some adjoining land areas?
They have. Here's the thing, they have. It's just very difficult because Anaheim very quickly, as soon as Disney back in the 50s spruced up Anaheim with a theme park. It used to be all orange groves. Very
Which
quickly.
Is why it's probably Orange County.
Orange County, yep. So very quickly, bordering, like on the other side of the parking lot. So if where Disneyland is, they bought ages ago property to the west of it, which they turned into parking lots. They bought property to the south of it, south of where the old parking lot used to be. Disney California Adventure was built on the original parking lot, and they still purchased more land south of that to be able to fit in that park. They're buying up land that they can and that other places are willing to give up because Disneyland is there. A hotel doesn't want to give up adjoining land next to it because it's all money.
I gotcha.
Right. Other land that has been purchased is like down the street, like a mile. there's another parking lot that isn't connected to the main bulk of land, and there's always been rumors that that could be space for like a third theme park if Disney wanted to do it, but really they need to fix up California Adventure first before we talk about a third park at all, right?
Right.
Because that's always been the other conversation is like, well, why didn't they just make Star Wars its own theme park, right? Like it's a big enough property to kind of take Star Wars and Marvel and maybe some Pixar stuff and make it their own third dedicated theme park, right? But that's kind of back to why people don't like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge going into Disneyland. It's because the way that park is themed too. So you have Main Street, Frontierland, Adventureland, Fantasyland, Tomorrowland. None of the lands are really singularly themed to one franchise. You know, there's other adjacent lands. So there's Critter County, Toontown, and New Orleans Square. And New Orleans might be the only other very specific one, sort of, right? But the idea that nestled between Frontierland and Fantasyland is specifically a Star Wars thing, that doesn't sit right with certain people. I personally just don't care. Again, it's space issues, and they're going to do what they got to do. It's a
space.
Yeah, it's a 14-acre single expansion, which is massive. You know,
that's big.
Yeah, as of right now, like prior to this expansion, all the information I had looked up before was that Disneyland Park, just the park itself, was something like 85 acres. You know, and that's including like the rides and everything. So like even the non-walkable paths, you know, where the railroad goes. So 14 acres on top of that is definitely a huge expansion. The previous largest expansion, I believe, would be Cars Land in Disneyland or Disney California Adventure. That is a 12-acre expansion. So
that's big.
Yeah, so that's big, and that was added to Disney's California Adventure because California Adventure failed miserably upon opening. So they needed something. Yeah. So anyways, let's getting to the news that was announced yesterday.
Yeah. Hey, we buried the lead long enough.
So right. I know.
Let's tell me what's going on. Fill me in.
So we got names for the two rides. We've always known that there are two rides. We always knew that one was a Millennium Falcon specific ride where we get to pilot it. That one we now know is called Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run.
Awesome.
I like this name. If you go onto the Disney Parks blog, there are videos that are giving a preview of what these rides also look like as well. So for the second ride, which is going to be the main ticket attraction, these are both big e-ticket attractions, it sounds like. But the second one, which was always previously referred to as like the Battle Escape attraction, the official name for this ride is Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. This name I don't like quite as much. It makes sense. It just... I had this conversation offline with you where with Smuggler's Run, that's an easy thing to say regarding rides because you have to remember the way people talk about rides. It's a lot different than a movie, right? Like, it'd be one thing to be like, hey, like, do you want to go watch Rise of the Resistance? It just sounds weird when you're saying something like, hey, let's go on Rise of the Resistance. Does that make sense?
Can't you just call it Resistance, though? Like, let's go ride Resistance?
Look, here's what's going to happen. Everybody shorthands everything. So, you know, nobody says, like, or some people can say it, but it's like, hey, you want to go in Splash or Space? You want to go in Big Thunder or
And
Pirates?
that would be Splash Mountain or Space Mountain?
Yep. And then,
nice.
So Big Thunder is, the full name of Big Thunder is Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Nobody fucking says that, you know? So we're gonna coin the phrase here,
right? And Rise of Resistance is just gonna be called Roar. So, like, if you want to roar,
R, yep.
hey, let's roar. And, we're going to ride Rise of Resistance.
Yeah. No, here's what's really going to happen is that do you want to go on the Star Wars ride or do you want to go on Millennium Falcon? Like, I think I'm not saying that's what I want to happen. I'm just saying I feel like amongst regular folk, right? Because, I like when we talk about parks because I get to nerd out and then you get to ask normal people questions that I might not think about, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a very good concern to have, like I've been to the parks enough that I just go wherever, but there's still, of course, I see all the time plenty of people staring into maps trying to figure out just even where the nearest bathroom is, right? So it's with that in mind that like Rise of the Resistance is just, that's a mouthful too. Like Smuggler's Run, I think
that's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah. Like Smuggler's Run, I think is a cool
roar.
name. Yeah. So this is where like names like Tower of Terror was really cool, Again, full full name of that ride was Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the ride that replaced it here in California is Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. So everybody just shorthands that to Guardians, right? So let's go on Guardians.
That one's pretty.
Yeah.
It's pretty self-explanatory there.
So, yeah, Rise of the Resistance. It's fine. I'm complaining, but I'm going to be there day one, right?
We're gonna have to print T-shirts that just say, "Let's roar."
Let's roar. Let's go. So,
and then, like in parentheses underneath it, it'll say, "Let's go ride Rise of the Resistance." And it'll become a thing, and
we'll see. We'll really see.
This is what I'm pushing for, anyway. This is my contribution to this conversation.
You're good. So
that's all I got.
Diving deeper into what was announced yesterday, there were 2 videos, one for each of these attractions released. For the Smuggler's Run, we get to see definitely inside the Millennium Falcon cockpit. There's a lot of buttons being pushed, a lot of switches being flipped.
Yeah, it looks fucking awesome.
Right. So I think we discussed this a little bit in the last theme park discussion. This video definitely confirms more so what the ride will be like, and that is you sit in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon and fly that sucker. So
from what I understand, right? There's what six passengers per pod, or 6 or 8.
6.
Is
so
it
right,
6?
It's 6.
So each person has a different quote unquote duty during the ride. So even if it wasn't like advanced technology where the storyline can meld to what's going on with the people controlling the ride, right? You would still have 6 different vantage points for the ride itself.
Right. Yeah. So what they are saying is that this ride will be fully immersive in participation. So
it's like one step below VR, I would
basically.
say.
Yeah, basically. You are basically in that cockpit staring at a big old screen. A similar ride, and I'm not sure if you've gone on it or have heard of it, but in Epcot there's a ride called Mission to Mars.
I have not been to Epcot since 1984.
Oh,
probably.
shit. Yeah. So there's a simulator there. You sit in a very, very claustrophobic little cockpit thing with 3 other passengers, so 4 total per pod. And it simulates an actual takeoff from Earth, blasting to space, and shooting over to Mars.
That's fucking awesome.
And it's really fun because as you launch off, it's not just like you're sitting in a seat that shakes. You feel the G-force pushing you back into that seat, which is super intense.
How do they do that?
It's a big centrifuge. So they have multiple ride vehicles,
that makes sense,
all sitting on multiple arms, and then as soon as you start launching, it's very subtle. Like if you are prone to motion sickness at all, I do not recommend this ride. But as somebody who handles pretty well, I will say this is the only ride that gives me slight motion sickness, because you're sitting there, the seats tilt back, and you're looking at straight up in the sky, and the centrifuge starts to spin, but it starts slowly enough that you don't notice the side motion. But because like it's accelerating up that way, I still feel it. You know, like you still start feeling that sideways motion, and then the seat, which was previously looking straight up, like as more G forces start pushing you into the seat, the seat itself slowly drops, and you're just spinning into the edge of the seat, like on a higher tech gravitron, right?
I'm pretty sure you just went to space camp, is what you just described.
Basically, yeah. So that one's pretty intense. But what I'm getting at here, so like every pod has 4 seats, and each seat still has their own. Like one's a pilot, one's an engineer, one's a navigator, one's a something else. And depending on what seat you're in, like they yell instructions at you to like push certain buttons, and they'll even like highlight the button. I'm not gonna lie, like I've been on this ride like 3 or 4 times, and I always miss whatever the instructions are, because while you're blasting off, you know, like
party
it's
time,
so
man.
fucking loud. Yeah, it's so damn loud that, you know, like, yeah, there's a joystick in front of me, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with it. But it doesn't matter, because the ride will say, like, if you don't push the button, like the computer, the Navi computer will just kind of pop in and be like, oh, don't worry, like the autopilot will take over for you. So the ride is literally the exact same every single time.
And this is the Millennium Falcon ride is not.
Yes.
Smuggler's Run is going to be far beyond this primitive centrifuge.
Yes.
Button pushing.
Yeah. So like whoever is so my understanding is like it'll be 2 pilots up front, 2 engineers, and then like 2 navigators or something like that.
Aren't there gunners too, or
I don't
not gunners?
think there are gunners on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're only in the cockpit, I don't know where the gunners would be looking, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want everybody focused on that front screen, right?
Right.
So the people in the second and third row, they'll be handling other stuff, but supposedly, from what I hear, so the pilots will have full control of where that ship is going. So if they crash into AT-ATs, so be it. If they crash into a wall, so be it. You know, they'll scrape by or something like that. And the other big part of that is what you do on this ride will supposedly affect your experience throughout the rest of Galaxy's Edge. So if you leave the ride and you scratch up the ship, then Hondo might place a large bounty on you.
Nice.
So this is a thing that will happen. The other concern, and we discussed this in the last one, is that 6 people per pod is super low ride capacity. Also, say it's just you and me going, and we have to share the ride with 4 other strangers who don't know what they're doing. You know,
right?
Like we're sitting, like you and I are like gung ho for it, but then we're stuck with a family that has like a mom, dad, and like 2 6-year-olds.
Yep.
Yeah, like I don't want a bounty on me because 6-year-old Kevin here couldn't carry his fucking weight. You know what I mean? Like,
why's it got to be me as a 6-year-old, man?
I don't know. I don't know why. Yeah, like I was just looking at you. I'm like, oh, like a generic white guy named Kevin.
Oh, nice. Thanks.
But so this
I'll take it.
But
cool.
this is a
You could
big.
have gone with like Chad or
No, Chad is a very specific name, but yeah, Kevin. I don't know why Kevin came. Like Mike, I guess Michael. You know, like come
Yeah,
on,
that'd be
Michael.
good.
God damn it, Michael.
Dale, Dwayne.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Come on, Michael. Come on, Jake. Get your shit together, Jake.
Nick.
Right.
Nick,
Like,
you're fucking it up for Lorenzo here.
flip the fucking switch, Nick. I don't care if you can't reach it. Flip the switch. So
Come on, Nick's mom.
right.
What the hell?
Teach your kid how to fucking follow the directions. Flip the switch or Hondo's are coming after us.
Now, in this hypothetical situation, would we be able to go, hey, time out? Like, I'll sit this one out. Like, there's
I don't think so.
There's some far better candidates. 5 people back.
Unknown, because we've never had a ride quite this interactive, right? There have been other rides where, like, yeah, you get in a car and you can shoot at stuff and, like, it affects your car, right? Men in Black at Universal Studios, Florida does that, you know? But, like,
Okay.
it doesn't affect your time outside of that ride, you know what I mean? Like, you get a high score on your own, but you're independent of whatever, 6-year-old Jacob is doing.
So what you're saying is that when I ride this ride, I'm going to later be chased down by bounty hunters, potentially.
Yeah, this is possible. What I want to say here is a few years ago, and by a few, I mean like, I want to say like 2013, 2014, like the first couple of years I was living in California.
Okay.
In Frontierland, in the off-season, quote-unquote off-season, which doesn't really exist anymore. It's always, like, when I went today, it's November fucking 18th. It was as busy as 4th of fucking July, right? It was fucking packed. But Frontierland had this thing where they had, like, this special experience you could do, and it only cost, like, $5 or something like that on top of your normal park ticket. So...
Okay.
It would give you like an information packet, and there would be other people playing the game, but you didn't know who was playing the game, but you would get like a role. So imagine it was like mystery dinner party situation, right? Where like you're a sheriff or you're a robber, and you would have to wear something that would indicate that you were part of the game to some degree, but you would walk around Frontierland and say you're the sheriff. They give you an information packet on who the robber is.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have to walk around that one singular land, which wasn't large. So I'm not saying like you were going to walk around for like 3 hours. You're probably walking around for like 30 minutes, right?
Okay.
And if you were the sheriff, you could kind of point at somebody and be like, hey, are you Jacob, right? Like you would get certain information. I didn't do it, so I'm kind of going by what I had heard other people's experience of it was.
Okay.
So you'd like point at somebody and you'd be like, hey, are you Jacob? And they would either say yes or no. And if no, then sorry, go on with your day, sir. But if yes, and you knew they were playing the game, well, then you caught Jacob, and there was literally a makeshift little jail cell that they put in the middle of the land that you would escort Jacob over into, and Jacob would be in jail for the next 15 minutes, right? But there was something like if you were the robber and you evaded the sheriff for an hour or so, then you won, right? So
what did you win?
You got like some sort of like little package or something like that on top of it, but like it wasn't anything big. It was more of just like the experience of it, right?
Gotcha.
Now, this was, like I said, this was about 2014, and groundbreaking for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge didn't happen until 2016, and the speculation was that was like a small scale test to see if something like that could happen in the park if people would interact with each other in that fashion, or if cast members could get in on it and try and find guests that were playing the game, right?
So, did it work?
It seemed to have worked because...
Okay.
Because, like, that was a small-scale test to what will operate throughout Galaxy's Edge, right? So the idea that Hondo is going to be looking for you specifically, you know, I don't know how they're going to keep track of you, but, you know, like, so there will be some high level of interactivity. Now, the other thing I did hear is say, like, you bring your grandma who is 93 and it's her last time going to Disneyland, but she just wants to go with the family. There is some sort of way to opt out, and I do not know what that means, you know. In Florida, there's something Florida has that California doesn't for their parks that makes a lot of sense to me into how they could keep track of you, and that is a system called the Magic Band. The Magic Band is an RFID wristband that it's optional that you can get, but what it is that if you link it to the Walt Disney World Experience app, you can put all your reservations, like you can book reservations for dinner and fast passes in the app, but it's connected to your Magic Band, and there are sensors all over the place that when you're checking in for dinner, all you have to do is like just walk up to the cast member and be like, hey, I'm checking in for dinner, and they'll have a little thing and be like, oh, just tap here with your wristband, and you'll do it, and they're like, oh, you're Lorenzo, great, you're here for a 6:30, you're a little bit early, great, just hang out, we'll get you a table as soon as possible. Fantastic. Right? Or when you're checking it for fast pass,
now,
boom, like go. And you use
RFID,
the same. Yeah, go ahead.
RFID stands for
radio frequency identification.
I totally knew that.
So there are a lot of good uses for it that I really enjoyed when I went to Walt Disney World last year. And one of the big ones too is also like when you get a ride picture. You can, depend if it's an older system that you can look at the pictures. They put the sensors underneath the screen, so you find what screen you're on, and you just tap the sensor that's underneath the screen with your picture on it, and your picture's automatically uploaded to your account in the app. All that good jazz. The newer rides do away with that completely, where instead of having that space taken up, where they're going to have the display screen, because we're in a digital age, they're kind of understanding now that people aren't going to go buy an 8x10 and carry around a physical 8x10 with them, right?
It'll just email the file to them.
Right. Yeah, like I will...
And you can print it out at Walgreens later.
Yes, exactly. So, you can buy like photo pass packages where like for the duration of your trip, any digital picture that happens, you get the full, clean, high resolution version of it, right?
That is fucking crazy.
It's awesome. So newer rides, like Frozen Ever After did this, and the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train did this. When you're on the ride, it senses that you have an RFID band on you. There is nowhere to tap in. You just go on the ride, and then you go on with life, and then within the next hour, it goes, hey, we saw that you were on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Here's a video of you on it. And I'm like, oh, that is awesome. That's fantastic. Now, Disneyland doesn't have magic bands. So, for Florida, it makes sense to me on how they would keep track of, like, where you are in the park, you know? Like, let's say you are on the ride. It knows you went on the ride because you have the magic band on. And then it will know if you enter Olga's Cantina because, again, the RFID will track you to some degree as you're passing by certain areas, right? I don't know how that's going to work at Disneyland unless we get these magic bands.
I'm feeling a little bit like Ron Swanson right now. Like, there's too much Disney keeping track of me. I'm looking over my shoulder.
It's it sounds weird at first, but the other cool thing is if you're staying at a resort hotel, the Magic Band also unlocks your hotel door. So that's cool too. If another cool thing is if you stay on resort, you can attach your credit card into it too. So any pay station, you can just, like the Apple Pay tap things, you just use your Magic Band and move on with life. So you theoretically could just leave your wallet back at the room, maybe just hold on to your ID if you want to drink, which is a thing. But yeah, so that's my question. In the last year, Disneyland has added new FastPass check-in scanners that have the exact same RFID disc thing that Walt Disney World has. But as of right now, they aren't activated by anything. When I check in with my FastPass, I just scan my annual pass barcode, or you can scan your ticket that you got in. All the FastPasses are digital and they are attached to your ticket. But again, that RFID thing is definitely there. And it's they're planning ahead for it, but by no means have we gotten it yet.
Maybe coming soon. That is something that will be introduced into Disneyland.
And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, because that system is so convenient. I'll say one last thing about Magic Bands, and then I'll move on to talking about Rise of the Resistance. One of the big reasons as to why Magic Bands haven't made their way to Disneyland, as per speculation of fans and park goers and stuff, is that Walt Disney World is a tourist's park. The majority of people that are going to Walt Disney World are people who flew in from out of state, out of country even, to visit, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime sort of thing, right? So asking people to buy a $12, $15 wristband is not a hard thing to do, per se, right? And again, it's optional. And with Disneyland, it's more of a locals park. LA area has like 12 million people in the metropolitan area, spread out amongst 5 counties, right? And even more if you count like San Diego, which is like a quick 2-hour drive without traffic-ish, But because it's a locals park, it's more spontaneous. People kind of just show up. So like the idea of like reserving FastPass far ahead of time and all this stuff, there's the sense that people wouldn't want to have to keep remembering like a Magic Band to keep track of all that stuff. I think this is just folly thinking. Like, this is just poor thinking, because the wristbands are collectible. They have special edition ones, right? Like, and with locals like collecting random shit. As I can tell you today, there was a special sipper souvenir cup for Mickey's birthday that people were waiting in line for like 30 minutes to an hour for. I got lucky and found a restaurant that had 0 line, or not 0, but it had like a 10-minute wait, and I bought 3 of them. That is, there was a limit of 1 per transaction, so I got in line 3 fucking times, right? So you introduce Magic Bands to these people, shit will go crazy. So that's why I don't understand why Magic Bands haven't made their way West Coast yet. It's possible. There's a lot of other things that are also different in Walt Disney World because of the Magic Bands. Literally every ride has a fast pass, whether or not it needs it. In Disneyland, only like the high e-ticket attractions have fast passes, but rides like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride does not have a fast pass, So there's nowhere.
That's a travesty.
The line is literally never more than like 30 minutes long, So it's a fast pass wouldn't really do much for you in that situation. But yeah, so that's my last point on to my curiosity on how they will keep track of you while you're exploring Galaxy's Edge. Now, that said, let's move on to my speculation about Rise of the Resistance. This is a mix of information that I have read online versus my own speculation. There was another video that was released for Rise of the Resistance. This one is definitely much more slickly produced than the Smuggler's Run video. Just a brief overview. You see some stormtroopers walking down a hallway. You see like a little mouse droid zipping around. You see an Imperial commander like behind some controls, and then a bunch outside of the port view, a bunch of, I'm assuming, resistance ships. I almost said rebels, but there would be resistance ships. They light speed in, and there's panic on this First Order starship or whatever that we may be on, base of some sort. So the big thing with this is that this promo video was actually filmed in the attraction itself.
In the actual fucking ride.
Yes. So
that is awesome.
It's fucking cool because, as you saw, it looks like this. I mean, we see one hallway. Shit looks completed.
It looks fucking phenomenal, man.
Right. Like it looks like a full movie set. And so here's what here's where Lorenzo speculation takes over. So we see him walking down a hallway, and it's a wide space. Now, I originally just thought that this was a set that they were reusing from one of the movies, right? But when I found out that this was from the ride itself, number one, I'm going to assume that this is Anaheim because it's further along in construction. Also because Anaheim's 1 hour south of Burbank, which is where Walt Disney is located. So that would just be easier for them to film there and not Florida.
It also makes sense.
Right. There is a full floor where the stormtroopers are walking. Now, here's what we kind of know about the ride is that it's a trackless vehicle. So it will be an automated vehicle that will zip through this hallway is what I'm assuming. So that's why we can get this nice shot of stormtroopers walking down a hallway, because there's no track for them to need to hide. And also it's a good thing that they're filming it now, because as soon as those trackless vehicles start rolling through there, even though it's a trackless vehicle, you'll still start seeing like the wear from where the tires continually roll over, right? So I just think that is really cool. That only gets me more excited to understand the space that we potentially will be zipping through. Like I don't think what we see in this video is like the queue at all, you know? Like I don't think they're going to add this is where we're going to be lining up, like, so it looks pretty darn cool.
This is part of the ride experience.
I think so, yeah. This is again my speculation. But yeah, like it's so for it to be detailed enough that they felt comfortable filming a full advertisement inside of it. Like that's cool. Cuz even for like Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, like all the advertising that came out for it when the ride opened was like special CGI created stuff, right? Like Rocket is like yelling at you, right? Like, we gotta help break out my friends, you know. But this one, like, there's actual
they weren't able to get the actual Rocket Raccoon for the ride experience,
right? Exactly,
is what you're saying.
Yeah,
gotcha.
So just to have physical stormtroopers walking down to physical space, it's fucking awesome.
It is fucking awesome.
Yeah. So like this
it
one,
was
I'm
at
very
this
excited
point. So I watched the video, and all of a sudden, my brain clicked, and I said to myself, I was like, "Oh well, shit! Like, it's going to be First Order stormtroopers throughout this entire Galaxy's Edge thing. Like, we're not getting classic Star Wars. We're absolutely only getting Disney era new Star Wars experience." And it was kind of eye-opening to me because I guess I hadn't really thought about it before.
Mm-hmm.
But it totally makes sense.
Yeah, because like in the what you would consider current events of Star Wars, that would be Force Awakens, Last Jedi, right? And
Resistance.
and Resistance, yeah. So there's a lot of people who are like, duh, like I wish it was like it's just Disney trying to take control of the things, but I'm like, no, it's more that you need.
No, it's totally not.
You need the consistency of like, this is present era Star Wars,
Right.
Air quotes. I'm doing air quotes for the listeners, but yeah. So like, even in Tomorrowland, they'll have the First Order stormtroopers roaming around, right? And you know who gets mad that they aren't A New Hope stormtroopers? Nobody. Nobody cares. It's stormtroopers walking around yelling at you,
One of the coolest experiences I ever had with stormtroopers was the first Star Wars celebration that I went to, which was Celebration 3 in Indianapolis. And it was the first con that I had ever gone to, right? Mm-hmm. And so George Lucas was there, and I was younger and naive and didn't understand the way that things worked. So I only had like 2 single-day passes, like Friday, Saturday, or some shit like that, right? So Thursday, it was announced that George Lucas was going to be there on Friday. I think. No, he was probably there Saturday. That would make more sense. But my buddy Kevin, shout out to They Call Me K-Dub, and I drove up to Indianapolis. We hung out that Friday, and then like we had heard, George Lucas is going to be there Saturday. So I was like, all right, cool. Well, like after we had spent the day there and whatever, we went back to our hotel room, and I was like, we should probably get up like a little bit early and like go and get in line, thinking like we're smart and we're gonna jump the gun on all these other fuckers, right? So we got up at like 4,
right?
Like 4 in the morning, and it was miserably cold and rainy, and the weather sucked dick. And we drive downtown, and this fucking, I expected the line to be like, a couple hundred people long, because I was stupid at the time. Yeah, it was like 10 city blocks.
Oh, Jesus Christ, yeah.
But the cool thing was that there was like the 501st was there, and there was like legions of stormtroopers like parading up and down the sidewalks and the streets and like directing traffic. Like, it was as immersive as a Disney experience is meant to be, right? And this was a Star Wars convention
in the streets of Indianapolis.
I don't even know. In the streets of Indianapolis.
Right.
It was amazing.
Well,
it was that was like the coolest fucking thing ever. And to be able to, and these are all volunteer people, right? So to be able to like, my brain says for like Disney, who does this shit. That's what they do at their theme parks. For when they are able to actually do these things and give this experience to the fans, it's going to be even better than that, and that was fucking amazing.
Right. Expectations are high, and I'm just curious, like, one last thing before I get to the last piece of news that was announced yesterday. There was one more that we haven't touched on at all yet. What I am excited to look forward to in this land isn't even just the rides, like, because really it 14 acres, but we get 2 rides, right? Cars Land was 12 acres, and there's 3 rides involved. But the thing with Cars Land is, if you've seen the movie, it's just that one street in Radiator Springs, right?
Okay.
So the way the land is, it's like a full-scale recreation of Radiator Springs with the street that goes down to the end of the firehouse. Flo's Diner is there. The Cone Motels are there. But again, like, you can stand in one end of the land, look down the street, and when you get to the other end of the street and look back, you can see the not Cars Land end of the street that is facing like Grizzly Peak Mountain, which is a different section of California Adventure. You know, that is very accurate to that movie, and that's how that works, and that's fine. But what I like about how Galaxy's Edge will be situated is that there won't be many straight paths. So, like, there will be corners to find, and corners that you might end up and have to turn back around and then explore another corner, right? Like, I'm looking forward to this aspect of it where there will be, like, a marketplace that will be in the center of it rather than just, like, one big swath of walkway, 2 rides, and that's it. Like, this will be a little village that you have to navigate through.
I was trying to think of an adjective and for the way that you were describing the layout of this, and I think Little Village is pretty appropriate.
Right, yeah. So that is the aspect of theming that I'm looking very much forward to. This is the theming at Animal Kingdom that I enjoy. I don't personally love Animal Kingdom in Florida, but I like the aspect that when you're walking down a trail, the trail kind of curves, so you don't know what's around that corner, right? Mm-hmm. And then you turn the corner, and so like it's the tiger enclosement or something like that. Like I thought that was cool. I don't like zoos, but I really like how that was done. There was a sense of like hiking almost to that, right?
Yeah, I was just actually gonna bring up like the St. Louis Zoo, because there's obviously there's different sections of the zoo, and part of it is kind of laid out in like a grid pattern. And there's like, you know, the monkey house and the reptile house,
right,
and the fucking bird house, and then there's a section that I think is called like River's Edge, and this is where like the hippopotamus are, and cool, like some other stuff. But it is like it's not necessarily like a one in, one out type of area, but it is more of like a safari type kind of rolling trail that you go through.
That's cool, yeah.
It is cool. So it does have like the dynamic of like a couple of different types of things,
right?
Types of viewing experiences. So yeah, as you were describing that, I'm like, okay, I get the difference. Like, one is kind of like this section here, and one is like you know, different experience over there. So
because even like with the original lands, like Fantasyland, like you can stand in one spot and basically see every other corner of Fantasyland. Frontierland, you can stand on one end and see most of the rest of it, sort of thing. This is a big issue I have with all the country pavilions in Epcot. Like, there's France and China, but like you stand at the front of China and you can kind of basically see everything. You know, there's no depth really to any of these places. So just the idea that we have a fully immersive land that like once you enter its thresholds, like you are in.
That's super cool.
Yeah. The only other land that does this really well is not actually a Disney park. It's Diagon Alley at Universal Studios in Florida. Universal Studios Florida does this really well. There is a entryway that closes Diagon Alley off from the rest of the park. So once you're in Diagon Alley, you turn around, you do not see Universal Studios whatsoever. You are in Diagon Alley.
That's like platform 9 3/4.
Basically, yeah. And then, like, there are different pathways you can take, different alleys. Alleys lead to other alleys. You know, I got mildly lost as to where I was in Diagon Alley. I didn't even know how to get into Diagon Alley at first. Like I was that person looking at the map. I'm like, I know it should be here. Why can't I find Diagon Alley? Like, there's no way Diagon Alley is that hard to find out, until I remembered that, if you remember, there's like a secret way to get into Diagon Alley because Hagrid had to lead Harry into it. So like,
yeah, it's you either go through the 3 broomsticks, or you
tapping the brick
flue
wall. Yeah, flue powder.
Flue powder.
Yeah, because like Hagrid tapped the brick wall, and then like the bricks unfolded, right? So the brick is how you enter Diagon Alley. Just mild spoiler alert. But it took me a long time to figure that one out. But yeah,
that's fucking awesome.
So that's So that's what Disney's competing with, and that's probably why we got something like this coming. So
yeah. So what else you got?
So last piece of news. We've been talking for a while.
Give me the last piece of news, because I was aware of those 2 things. I was not aware there was a third, so I'm excited to hear what you got.
John Williams wrote new music. So that's the...
Okay.
Yeah, you did know that.
Okay,
you just forgot about it.
Know that.
You just forgot about it.
I forgot about it.
Yeah, because
I have not heard it yet.
Right.
I will say that.
So there is a third video in the Disney Parks blog entry, and it is that John Williams has composed new music for the area. It's exclusively for the land. And if you watch the video, it definitely gives you the biggest preview of the area itself. There's a lot of drone shots going through the current state of Galaxy's Edge as still under construction. It's definitely the Anaheim one. I recognize the surroundings of it very clearly. And if you do watch this third video, pay close attention. You'll get a lay of how Anaheim is laid out, because in the drone shots, they try and do a really good job of like pointing down back into the land. But just watch it a second time, let the first time roll, be awed by the new music, all that stuff. But then anytime you look away from the land, you see Anaheim. Like, there's a street with a 7-Eleven, there's residential neighborhoods.
This is on my immediate list of things to do.
Is watch this video.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So John Williams composing new music is pretty darn big, because the word is always that after episode 9 he's pretty much done with the franchise, which is fine. He's allowed to retire. But the fact that Disney has gotten him to write for a theme park specifically,
yeah, it's pretty fucking awesome.
Because his music has, of course, with Harry Potter, Star Tours, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park at Universal, E.T. at Universal. His music has been integrated to theme parks for decades now. But, we've always just taken pre-existing themes and just put them to the current rides or whatever. But for John Williams to be okay with, like, I'll write new music for this whole land, and we'll get some sort of Batu Black Spire specific theme, like that's an interesting thought. Like, I want to know how they describe to him, like, oh, it's Black Spire where like all the smugglers go and blah blah blah, right? So it's a cool thought. So, but anyways, so that's the big news.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's the big news regarding Galaxy's Edge as of right now. Yeah, this was all announced yesterday in Epcot during Destination D. It was, it was. I'm excited. Like, I just expect. I don't know why I didn't expect videos to come along with it, but I was just expecting them just like to name drop and walk away. But the fact that we got 3 videos previewing the land,
I was completely unaware that any news was coming. And you had texted me and said, hey, keep your fucking eyes open tomorrow. So you had texted me a couple days ago.
Right.
Keep your eyes open. Like, rumor is the shit's coming. So be on top of it, And my lazy self kind of loafed around yesterday morning, and it was like a barrage of text messages real quick, like yada, like da 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 da. This is what's going on. So it was super nice sitting down and talking about this and getting a little bit more info.
Right. Yeah. Because you and I haven't really gone back and forth yet talking about this stuff yet. So
nope.
It's nice having this podcast to be able to do that.
And I can deep dive into some Clone Wars and some Resistance, but when it comes to Disney parks, I'm out of the loop.
Oh, sure.
Without Lorenzo here giving me solid information, whatever he tells me, I believe. Right. So, there's that.
Yep. So that's the big news. Again, Disneyland's in Anaheim, California will open first, summer 2019. Florida's version at Walt Disney World, that one is going in Disney Hollywood Studios. That one's opening fall 2019. So that's the only thing that makes me worried, is that because I live here in outside of Anaheim in Orange County, I was hoping Walt Disney World was open first so that, maybe it draws people that way. Like, you get the people who live here that can afford to fly to Florida and get that out of their system, and then they skip out on the Disneyland version. But because it's opening here first,
you're balls deep in the thick of things.
Oh, right, yeah, like
is what's gonna happen.
Yeah, no, like people from New York will be flying to Anaheim to check this out, right? Like, so
people
it's gonna be
from
nuts. But
further than New York, I think.
Oh, surely, yeah, like just worldwide. But I think the reason is because they think there's the understanding that because this is a locals park, maybe the locals will take the back seat, and then instead of letting Walt Disney World become mayhem, which it already always is, letting Disneyland take that hit. And also because this is the closer park, maybe like it's easier to get the hands-on trial runs and making sure all the cast members stay in character and understand their character, because this will be an area too where I haven't gone yet, but when you go into Pandora in Animal Kingdom, the world of Avatar, supposedly that area is very heavily themed to Pandora, to the point where, like, if you buy something from one of the gift shops in Pandora, you don't even get a Disney park bag. You just get like some sort of Pandora bag, because they want to keep you in that world.
Nice.
So the other part about Galaxy's Edge is that the cast members are still cast members, but they are all going to be some sort of character. They will have their own backstory. There will be aliens walking around, right?
They are section specific.
Yes. So go ahead.
I have a question for you. Currently, Galaxy's Edge is being built in Anaheim and in Orlando.
Yes.
Is there going to be Galaxy's Edge in, say, Disney Europe or Disney Japan?
Yeah. That's a good question, and I haven't heard anything yet. So, that is a good question. I haven't heard anything at all. I'm sure that talk has happened. Because if one city surely wants that, Japan, their Star Wars market,
sure.
Oh my God, like put a Star Wars land in Tokyo, that is gonna go nuts. Yeah, so that's a good point, because one last personal opinion that I'm gonna throw out there before we can wrap this up. The only thing that does slightly bother me, but I understand why, is that the two lands are identical. The reason I don't like that is because I like the idea that each park, each city's park has their own different flavor. So Disneyland and Magic Kingdom, everybody wants to compare them, but they are different. Despite the fact that they both have Space Mountain, they both have Splash Mountain, they both have Pirates, each of those rides are still different from one another, so there's a different feeling to the parks, right? The frontier lands at the two parks aren't 100% the same layout. So there's just a different feeling. Like Disneyland, Tony Baxter, who's one of the great Imagineers for all the Disney parks, he described Disneyland as being the park that's the most charming. And then he described Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom as the one that's being the most magical, right? So there's just a slightly different focus there, right?
Right.
Now, the idea that both these lands are 100% the same, that is... It's fine, because you have to... If this is quote-unquote canon, you can't have discrepancies there if they're both going to be Black Spire. But I would have liked it if it was like, this one's Black Spire and this one's something else. And then you get like a two-pronged Star Wars experience by visiting both parks. Right?
Yeah.
Now, I understand why they duplicated it, because they were anticipating bazooka crowds at both ends of the spectrum here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, and who knows? Maybe Star or maybe Disney in Tokyo will not be Black Spire. Maybe that will be
just
I'd say Scarif, but
new.
Scarif is gone.
Right.
But you know what I mean.
Just something, something new, something different.
Else.
But yeah, so we'll see. But as of right now, it's these two. And again, yeah. Like, I mean, it's a 3-year process. So if they want Tokyo to get into this competition, they better act soon. This would be the only thing that gives me evidence that they wouldn't do anything different, because the blueprint is there. You know, the ride technology is there. All you have to do is just duplicate all these ride technologies again. So that's why, like, even if you do go to Tokyo Disneyland, like, you know, again, different feeling. I've never been, but they still have pirates. They still have, you know, they're very like Space Mountain and stuff like that. So, yeah, Splash Mountain they have over there. But yeah, it's just kind of easier to give everybody their own hub to get to. But I would love to be able to go, to Tokyo and have a different experience there, rather than, you know, like if I go to Walt Disney World, I now know that I can skip out going to Disney Studios, Hollywood Studios there, because it's the exact same. I've got it, you know. So, but yeah. Anyways, that's
awesome.
That's what I got for Disney Parks discussion. Any other questions or comments that you might have on parks specifically?
Not that I can think of. I encourage anyone listening to this on whatever platform you're listening on, bring us your questions. Lorenzo is the guy to ask, and I probably won't know. Lorenzo might, and if we don't know, we will do our best to gather, you know, what information you're looking for, and get that back out to you.
Yeah.
So
when it comes to the parks, I'm definitely a deep well of knowledge. Yeah. Like, I'm always messaging you random facts, I think, right? Like,
all the time.
Oh, here's a good random fact for Disney parks. So Matterhorn reopened this weekend after a 4-month or 5-month refurbishment. Did you know that Matterhorn is the first steel tubular roller coaster in the world?
I did not.
So that first steel type roller coaster with those tubes that the car latches onto, Disneyland is the first to make that innovation. So
very nice.
Right. So anyways.
So if you have any other Disney facts or questions about Galaxy's Edge or Disney in general, hit up Lorenzo on Facebook, Not the Nerds Podcast. You can ask me whatever questions you want. I may or may not be able to answer on Twitter at Not the Nerds. If you don't want to go that social media, you can do the old style email, notthenerdspodcast@gmail.com. We also definitely give shouts out to both Kevin at They Call Me K-Dub for our hero pose, and Lindsay via email strangefantasymusic@gmail.com. She's the one that was gracious enough to do our intro outro music for us. And other than that, this has been your Disney Park, instead of rumors, facts this time, I think.
Yeah, a mix of facts with speculation, looking forward, the whole
Yep.
bag, the whole bag. So
Yeah, so check us out on YouTube, should you desire. But until next time, I've been Kevin Horde.
Lorenzo Fon over here.
These aren't the nerds you're looking for.
Bye-bye.